They called it a wedding, but it felt like a merger, rooms of crystal and quiet knives. Cameras blinked, smiles strained. In the center of it all, she stood like a lit match in a room full of oxygen, contained, until it wasn't. Naomi Carter. That was her name, and names meant things. Hers used to mean soft Sunday mornings and stubborn, brave choices. Today, it meant collateral. If you're watching/reading this, tell me where you're tuning in from in the comments, and hit subscribe so you don't miss. This is a slow burn with a happy ending, but the fire gets hot. Stay with me. Red Heart. The string quartet hushed as the double doors opened. The ballroom, all blush gold light and towering florals, turned its head. Naomi stepped in on the arm of her father, Richard Carter, a man whose handshake could move a city block and whose eyes were permanently tired now, as if he'd mortgaged his sleep along with everything else. His cufflinks flashed. His jaw kept tightening, loosening, tightening. "I can still walk out," she whispered, the satin of her dress breathing with her. "You won't," he said, not unkindly. "Please. Just, please." On the far end of the aisle, Adrian Vale stood like a promise no one asked for, 6 feet of composure wrapped in a tailored black tuxedo. Billionaire. The Vale Group. Entire neighborhoods remodel their sidewalks when his company buys a building nearby. Some people carry reputations like luggage. Adrian wore his like a second skin. Immaculate. Controlled. Cold. Their eyes met. Something flickered. It might have been a warning. The officiant's voice rose and fell over the vows they hadn't written. Her father's hand shook as he passed her to Adrian. His fingers were warm. Hers were colder than the diamond on her left hand, an elegant, surgical sort of stone that looked like it was cut to remind you of how sharp money could be. "Do you, Adrian James Vale, take Naomi?" "I do," Adrian said, so simply it sounded like he'd signed another document. "Do you, Naomi?" She looked at her father, then at the man whose chin didn't tremble when he spoke, whose eyes held a steadiness she might have called kindness if she didn't know better. She thought of the envelope she'd found under her father's whiskey glass a week ago, final notice. She thought of the plant workers whose paychecks had bounced. She thought of the way her father's voice broke when he asked for her help without saying the words. "I do," she said, and felt the air in the room change temperature. Applause rose like foam, then thinned. The pen they used to sign the marriage license had weight, an engraved V at its throat. Naomi's signature looked like it belonged to a stranger. She watched the ink settle into the paper grain and imagined it rooting there like a weed. "Congratulations," someone said. "A perfect match," someone else tried. Naomi lifted her chin. Perfect was a kind of prison if you locked the door from the inside. There was no bouquet toss. No cake cutting, no giddy best friend sliding into a booth at midnight to cry laugh. Instead, a private elevator, a silent ride, and a driver who opened the limousine door so gently it felt like an apology. The car smelled like cedar and a faint, expensive cologne. Adrian slid in opposite her, the city blurring behind him, a necklace of lights. He watched her. Not hungrily, not even possessively, just watched, the way someone might watch waves to understand how the tide kept the moon's secrets. "You hate this," he said. "You're very perceptive." "A beat. It matters to me that you're not miserable." "To you, misery is poor optics," she said. "That too," he admitted, the corner of his mouth almost, not quite, turning. "But also." "Also what?" "Also, I don't like unnecessary losses." "Is that what I am? A loss to minimize?" "That's what the world will try to make you," he said, eyes steady. "I don't intend to let it. I'm sure the world is terrified. I am, occasionally." He meant it. The honesty was so bare it wrong-footed her for a second. Naomi turned to the window so he wouldn't see it happen. The city leaned closer to the glass, the yellow-throated windows, the slick black streets, the honk and hiss of it all. Somewhere, a busker drew a bow across a violin and turned pain into something that sounded like courage. She tucked her hands under her thighs to warm them. "I don't expect anything from you," she said. "Not kindness. Not cruelty. Just the truth. You'll have it. I wonder if you even remember what it is." "I do," he said quietly. "Even when it costs." They didn't speak for the rest of the ride, but the silence wasn't empty. It had shape. Naomi could feel it settling between them like a third person neither of them had invited. The Vale house sat at the edge of the city like a hymn, glass and stone, clean lines, a pool that looked as if it had been poured into the ground from the sky itself. The night pressed its face to the windows. Staff stood at attention in a quiet corridor, their smiles practiced, their eyes curious. Naomi felt their gaze graze her dress, her posture, the ring that didn't fit right. "Mrs. Vale," the house manager said with a gracious nod. Naomi almost corrected her, "I'm not that," but the words died in her throat. The papers said otherwise. "Naomi," she said. "Please." "Of course. I'm Inez. It's a pleasure. If there's anything you need." "Thank you." Inez's smile had warmth in it that wasn't part of the job. Naomi held on to that. Adrian led her through rooms that felt like impossible math problems, too much space, too little softness. Art on the walls that whispered about beauty and battles. A piano sleeping under a black cover. A library with high windows and books old enough to smell like rain even when it hadn't fallen in weeks. He stopped at a door with frosted glass and turned to her. "This is your wing." "My wing," she repeated, dry. "How medieval." "Call it privacy," he said. "Your room is at the end. Dressing room, bath, a studio if you want it. If you prefer different colors, different furniture, consider it done. I'm not a project to renovate. I'm aware." She wanted to ask what he did consider her. He didn't offer it. "And you?" she asked. "Where do you sleep?" "On a bed of stock options." "Upstairs." "Opposite side." No hesitation. No attempt at romance or pretend. "We don't have to," he paused, as if the word pretend tasted bitter. "We don't have to perform when we're alone." Naomi didn't say thank you, but something in her exhale was relief adjacent. "Good night, Mr. Vale." "Adrian," he said. She nodded once. "Adrian." She didn't sleep much that night. The room was beautiful, all moon-washed linen and soft silence, but her mind kept running in lit loops. She walked to the window and pressed her palm against the cool glass, looking down at the black sheet of pool, the hedge line, the city beyond. She thought of her mother's photographs. Women who looked like they'd wrestled light out of the air and won. She thought of telling her younger self the truth, that sometimes choices look like cages, and sometimes cages crack if you sing to the bars long enough. Her phone buzzed. "Are you okay?" From Zara, her best friend since they were 9 and stealing mangoes from Mrs. Keating's yard. "I will be," Naomi wrote. "Tell me something ridiculous. I once tried to flirt with a man by telling him his eyebrows had leadership potential." Naomi smiled into the dark. "That is truly terrible. Do you need me? I can come burn the prenup with a candle from my landlord's altar." "No prenup," Naomi typed, and then realized she'd typed it. Stared at the words like they'd come from someone else. The 3 dots danced. "Okay, now I'm actually coming over with a fire extinguisher because what? I'll explain later. I'm safe. I'm angry. I'm not defeated. That's my girl. Call if you panic. Or if you want me to read dramatic poetry outside his window at 3 a.m. Tempting. Sleep, Z." She put the phone face down and stood there until the horizon softened from ink to steel. Morning landed gently. A tray arrived with coffee, fresh fruit, and a note written in a hand that was surprisingly neat. There's a driver at your disposal. Your schedule is your own. If you prefer to work, there's space. If you want to disappear, no one will stop you. A. She read it twice. No demands. No schedule her life had to fold around. In its way, that too was a kind of power, giving someone the freedom they were sure you'd try to take. She didn't trust it, not yet. She showered, pulled on tailored trousers and a white blouse she'd packed as armor. When she stepped into the library, she found Adrian there, sleeves rolled, tie on the table, a line between his brows that looked carved. Sunlight poured over the wood. He stood when he saw her. "Coffee?" she asked, gesturing with the cup the staff had sent. "Please." She poured without asking how he took it. He drank whatever she handed him. The act was small, but it mattered. "Your father will be here at 11, he said. "To finalize the Vale contract." "You mean the contract you needed my signature to secure," she said, "not to wound but to make the floors stop shifting." "I needed your alliance," he said. "The board of Norcott Industries wants stability. They want to know the man they're selling to is rooted in this city, not just a number that can fly away. Your family name is a bridge," she finished. "And what am I on that bridge? A flag? A toll?" "You're a partner," he said, and he didn't blink when he said it. "You don't know me enough to use that word." "That's true," he conceded. "I intend to." She opened her mouth to reply, but Inez's knock cut between them. "Mr. Carter is here." The library door swung wide. Her father entered with a smile nailed to his mouth and a sheen on his forehead that said he'd stopped trusting air. Behind him, Malcolm Pierce, Adrian's attorney, carried a leather folder like a weapon. "Naomi," her father said, too brightly. "You look beautiful." "Adrian, my boy, ready to make history?" Naomi watched the tremor in his left hand. Everyone else might have missed it. She never did. They sat. Papers flirted with sunlight. The words on them were knives dressed up as clauses: asset transfer, strategic integration, joint oversight committee. Naomi felt a heat rise under her skin. She wasn't a lawyer, but she knew when something was lopsided enough to make your spine go sideways. "Section 11, she said, fingers landing on the page like a hawk. "The contingency clause regarding the Harborview redevelopment. Why is the liability structured to isolate Carter Holdings if the environmental study fails?" Richard cleared his throat. "We've discussed that with Vale Group Counsel." "Discuss it again," she said, turning the page to Adrian. "This is a noose." Malcolm's mouth tightened. "Ms. Carter." "Mrs. Vale," Adrian corrected mildly, eyes on Naomi, not the lawyer. "And she's right." He took a pen, drew a line through the clause, and wrote a new one in clean, sure strokes. "Joint liability. Joint responsibility. We fix what we break. Together." Malcolm blinked. "We haven't." "We have now," Adrian said. "Draw it up." Her father exhaled. For a second, his whole body softened, like a man who'd put down a heavy box. Naomi saw it and it did something bone-deep to her anger. It didn't forgive him. But it complicated him, as fathers often are, love and failure welded together. They worked. They argued. At some point, a pale winter sun burned through the cloud and set the dust in the air on fire. When the last page was signed, Richard stood. He held out his hand to Adrian. Adrian took it. Naomi felt the tremor in the room ease. "Thank you," her father said, to both of them. "You've," his voice caught. He swallowed. "You've saved us." Naomi's eyes stung. "We've bought you time," she said. "Don't waste it." "I won't," he said, and looked like a man promising himself. He left. Malcolm left with a pinched look that said he'd be redrafting clauses in his sleep. The door closed. Silence again, different this time. You didn't have to change that clause, she said, careful. I did, he answered. If I expect you to believe me when I say partner. The word, believe, kissed someplace bruised in her. She hated that it felt like balm. You look like you could use fresh air, he said, softer. There's a garden. I prefer streets, she said. Then let's pick one. We. He shrugged slightly, as if to say maybe this was how you made a cage bigger, by walking out of it together, just to see if the sky stayed overhead. They didn't take a convoy, just a black sedan and a driver whose music was a quiet jazz Naomi mostly liked. The city was a different animal by day, mouth open, teeth out, laughing too loud and crying into its sleeve. The Vale name was a key in most neighborhoods. Today, Adrian used it to unlock nothing but time. They walked a farmer's market by the waterfront, hands to themselves, shoulders not quite touching. Naomi bought clementines from a woman with laugh lines like parentheses around her mouth. Adrian asked a vendor about heirloom tomatoes as if he'd always wanted to know how a seed decided to be brave. Children zipped between them like sparrows. A dog pulled its owner toward a stand selling fresh bread and chaos in equal measure. The wind off the water smelled like metal and salt. Naomi shoved her hands into her coat pockets and felt her breath finally, go all the way down. Why no prenup, she asked, without looking at him. His answer came without delay. Because I don't plan to make a stranger rich by making my wife poor. She stopped. Turned. He did too. The world went a little quiet around them, the way markets do right before rain. I won't be bought with softer words, she said. I'm not trying to buy you, he said. I'm trying to speak in a language you recognize. And what language is that? Risk, he said. You took one yesterday. So did I. Don't you mean calculation? Maybe they're cousins. A gull screamed overhead. Somewhere, a busker made a minor chord sound like hunger. Naomi felt something loosen inside her, the knot of it shifting, not dissolving. What do you want from me, Adrian? Past the optics. Past the press. What do you want? He didn't flinch. The truth when I mess up. Your eyes when I'm forgetting why I built any of this. The fight you carry when a room tries to make you small. And time. I want time. She could have laughed at the audacity of it. She didn't. Time is expensive, she said. I can afford it, he said. If you can. She looked away first, because she needed a second to breathe. I can afford me, she said. I'm still learning the price. They kept walking. The sky threatened rain and then, feeling dramatic, decided against it. He bought a loaf of bread they didn't need. She peeled a clementine and ate it in clean arcs, handing him slices without asking if he wanted any. He took each piece like it was a vow. On the way back to the car, a journalist appeared like smoke with a camera. Mr. Vale. Naomi. Smile for us, first day as man and wife. The flash popped. Reflex. Naomi flinched. Adrian stepped half a foot closer to her, not a touch, just a presence, large enough that the camera's lens had to take both of them or neither. No statements today, he said, voice even. Just one, Naomi, are you happy? She could have delivered a polished line, a glossed truth. She didn't. She looked into the camera and said, clearly, ask me at the end. Then she took Adrian's arm, her choice, and got in the car. In the privacy of the back seat, she let out a breath she hadn't let herself admit she'd been holding. He didn't comment. He looked out the window and gave her quiet like a gift. Evening slid over the house like silk. In the library, lamps clicked on one by one, spreading honeyed light. Naomi stood at the piano and lifted the cover. The keys were smooth under her fingers. She hadn't played since her mother died, grief made music too honest. But tonight, her hands found a melody her mother loved, something simple and stubborn. She played it haltingly, then with more courage. Behind her, she felt him before she saw him. He didn't interrupt. He didn't applaud. When she finished, he said, "My mother used to play that. Badly. I liked it anyway." "Mine played it like it owed her money," Naomi said, smiling before she could stop it. He smiled too, real, small. "Dinner in 20? Fine," she said. "But no more contracts at the table." "No more contracts," he agreed. "Just food." "Food," she echoed, as if the word itself were a fragile truce. She almost told him then about the call she'd overheard between her father and someone named Hollis, the one that made her blood run thin. But she didn't. Not yet. Not until she knew if the truth would be armor or blade in this house. In her room later, she found another note on the table. "I had the Harborview clause corrected across all copies. I meant what I wrote this morning. A." She folded the paper once, twice, tucked it into the drawer where she'd put her passport and the last photo of her mother laughing with her head thrown back. In bed, Naomi thought about how people called today a wedding, how they'd send her photos plastered with hearts and hashtags she wouldn't read. She thought about her father's hands, the line between Adrian's brows, the way clementine tastes different when someone catches each slice like it's important. She didn't believe in love that saves you without asking you to save yourself too. If this story ended with love, and she had decided it would, then the path there was not a ribbon. It was a road. Roads were made by walking. Outside, wind worried the hedge. Inside, she turned off the lamp and let the dark feel like a room instead of a threat. Sleep came. The message arrived in the hour where night pretends it can hold back morning. "Your father didn't tell you everything. Meet me. Alone. H." Naomi read it once, then again, as if the second pass might change the letters into something less like a blade. The screen lit her face, a pale, floating oval above sheets she hadn't warmed. She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The house breathed around her, air vents humming, distant pipes clinking like quiet cutlery. She could ignore it. She could forward it to Adrian, pretend calm while her pulse hammered. She could delete it and tell herself that peace is sometimes made of not knowing. She didn't do any of those things. A knock, 3 precise raps, broke the dark. Naomi slid the phone under her pillow and opened the door. Adrian stood there, tie in his fist, shirt half-buttoned, eyes bright in a way that said sleep had not been invited. "There's been a development at Harborview." "What kind of development?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "The kind that leaves teeth marks." He angled his head toward the hall. "Kitchen." They walked in a silence that had shape, 2 people moving through the same storm, separately. The kitchen lights were soft and golden, domestic in a way this house rarely managed. He poured coffee and didn't ask how she took it. She watched him for the smallest sign that his hands shook. They didn't. He slid a thin folder across the marble. An email thread, a bid sheet, a single name that lifted every hair along Naomi's arms. "Hollis Group," she said, tasting rust. "Yes." He lifted his cup, set it down again without drinking. "Anonymous shell on the bid, but the scent is unmistakable. They outbid us at 3:14 a.m., with terms deliberately designed to box us out of due diligence." "How do you know it's them if it's anonymous?" "Because Hollis likes to be nearly invisible. To be invisible would rob them of the pleasure." He met her eyes. "You know the name." "I know they've circled my father before. Like sharks circle boats that leak." Naomi let the folder close under her palm. Her phone felt hot where it touched her thigh. He swore they were done sniffing. Then he lied. Adrian's voice wasn't cruel. If anything, it was subdued. Or he hoped his lie would become the truth. She didn't defend Richard. Not because she didn't love him, but because the hard thing you know is still more merciful than the soft thing that isn't real. What now? She asked. Board at 9, he said. We'll brief them. Then we smoke out the leak. She heard the edge in her own voice and didn't sand it down. He said, without flinching. You saw what Pierce missed yesterday. I want that eye in the room. The surprise was small but bright. You want me in the boardroom. I want my partner in the boardroom. He said it deliberately. Naomi nodded once. Then let's ruin someone's morning. The Vale boardroom was all steel and light, a cathedral for people who prayed to numbers. 12 executives lined the long table, each with a tablet and a mouth set to neutral. A glass wall framed the slate sky, thin rain teasing its way down. Adrian took the head of the table. Naomi sat at his right, not a decoration but a presence. One set of eyebrows lifted, then lowered. Another pair of eyes flicked from her to Adrian to her again, calculating. Adrian opened. An overnight overbid at Harborview, structured to compress timelines and starve our due diligence. I believe Hollis Group sits behind it. A murmur. Executive 3, navy suit, heritage cufflinks, cleared his throat. We can counter. We will if it's smart, Adrian said. But this isn't only about price. It's about access. Someone fed them our contours. Executive 5, mid-30s, bright tie, the kind of smile that didn't reach his pupils, leaned forward. With respect, can we confirm Hollis before we start lighting torches? We don't want to make enemies of potential allies. Naomi spoke before she could second-guess it. Hollis is not a potential ally. They burn the house and sell the nails. A few heads turned. The bright tie executive's smile sharpened a millimeter. And you are? She is Naomi Vale, Adrian said, not taking his gaze off the man. And when she speaks in this room, you do well to listen. The temperature shifted. A power recalibration so subtle and unschooled I might have missed it. Bright tie forced another smile. Of course. Naomi kept her voice even. If Hollis anticipated our bid timing, their information is either coming from Norcott's board, unlikely, given how buttoned they are, or from inside this building. Executive 2, an older woman with silver hair in a perfect twist, tapped her stylus. Security audit. It's underway, Adrian said. But there's a faster first pass. He picked up his tablet. Everyone in this room will forward the last 14 days of external email pertaining to Harborview to security. Now. No one moved. The pause was half a second too long. Then chairs adjusted, devices unlocked. Electronic chimes murmured as attachments flew. Naomi watched faces, not screens. Who swallowed? Who didn't breathe? Who calculated how much performative indignation would be too much? Her phone vibrated, noon. Riverside Cafe. Come alone. H. She typed back under the table. Why should I trust you? The dots pulsed, then stopped. Then, because I know why the Harborview soil report was sealed. And who sealed it? Her pulse jumped. She tucked the phone away and lifted her chin as if nothing inside her had moved. Adrian spoke again, voice smooth. We proceed on 2 rails. Operations will treat the Hollis bid as hostile and prepare a counter with contingencies for a compressed escrow. Legal will assume nothing good about anyone. Anne. He slid a glance to Naomi, a question without the question. Strategy will open a back channel. She met his eyes. To whom? Norcott's junior block, he said. They're skittish about Whitaker's environmental liabilities. Harborview's old soil may ruin their appetite. If we expose what they're afraid of, we can pull them off the table with or without the bid. Executive 3's cufflinks caught the light. Expose what, precisely? That, Adrian said, is what strategy is about to discover. He dismissed the room. Chairs scraped, murmurs followed the bodies out the door. When it was only the two of them and the rain, Adrian turned his head. "You're sitting on something." Her instinct was to deny. But if she wanted a different life than the one that had been arranged around her, she had to behave differently than the girl who protected everything until it crushed her. "Hollis texted me," she said. "A beat. This morning. Before you knocked." His jaw flexed. Not anger. Calculation wrapped around worry. "What did they say?" "That my father didn't tell me everything. That they want to meet. Noon. Riverside Cafe. Alone." He let the silence stand for 2 counts, 3. "Are you going?" "Yes." She didn't blink. Just the barest exhale. "Then I'm going too." They said alone. They would, he said. Because they prefer women isolated. "I won't interfere. I'll be nearby." "You don't get to make an order sound like a kindness." "I'm not issuing an order," he said quietly. "I am telling you how I intend to keep you alive." She hated how that steadied her. "Fine," she said. "But if you blow my cover, I'll tell the board you cried during a perfume commercial." He almost smiled. "I do, actually. The one with the dog." "Obviously," she said. The stupid warmth of the exchange curled around the cold in her chest, made something human out of the day. By 11:30, the rain had turned to a damp mist that settled on skin like breath. The driver eased the sedan into a spot a block from the Riverside Cafe, all chipped paint and potted herbs that tried their best. The river ran brown and muscular on the far side, shouldering barges like cattle. Adrian looked like anonymity, dark coat, collar up, nothing about him screaming money but the way he held gravity in place. "I'll sit by the window," he said. "You won't see me. If you need me, touch your left earlobe." Twice. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "If they threaten you." "They won't," she said, lying with the confidence of a girl who grew up writing essays over the sound of her father negotiating with wolves. She stepped inside. The cafe smelled like rain and cinnamon. A woman in an oversized sweater wrestled a stroller near the door, a man with a novel and a chipped mug pretended to read while he listened to the barista flirt. Naomi scanned the room. No one screamed Hollis, which, of course, meant Hollis had chosen a body that didn't need to. "Naomi Carter," a voice said from the corner, and the name slid over Naomi's skin like an old shirt that didn't fit anymore. She turned. A man in his late 40s watched her with a face made of lines earned smiling and scowling in equal measure. The hair at his temples had given up the fight. His suit was good, but tired. He didn't look like a shark. He looked like a man who used to be one and now missed the water. "You're Hollis?" she asked. "I am Graham Hollis," he said. "But I didn't send the text." She didn't sit. "Then who did?" "My sister," he said. "She handles the things I don't want under my fingers." "Charming." Naomi pulled out the chair across from him and sat, spine straight. Through the glass, she could feel Adrian's gaze like a pressure system. "You asked to meet. Talk." Hollis folded his hands, looked at them for a moment, then up at her. "Your father is a proud man. Get to the part where you stop rehearsing your empathy." For a heartbeat, something like respect flickered in his eyes. "There's a sealed environmental report on the Harborview site," he said. "It's worse than anyone disclosed. Norket capped liability 5 years ago by burying it in a subsidiary that doesn't exist anymore." "I know about the old soil concerns," Naomi said, watching his mouth, not his eyes. "That's why the clause Adrian struck yesterday mattered." "The clause was a breadcrumb," Hollis said. "The loaf is that your father knew about the cap." She felt the floor shift a quarter inch. "No." Hollis shrugged, small, regretful. He signed the confidentiality when he sold Carter Construction's municipal division. Norkett paid a premium plus immunity. Your father took the deal to stop a layoff that would have gutted 300 families. Naomi's vision narrowed, then widened. She thought of Richard's hands, the boxes under his eyes, the way he watched the news like a weather report for a storm only he could see. Why tell me? She asked. If you're trying to steal Harborview, why arm the enemy? Because I don't care about Harborview, Hollis said. Not in the way you think. I care about watching Vale bleed. And I know exactly where to cut. Vale is sitting in a car across the street, Naomi said. He doesn't bleed where you think. Everyone bleeds where I think, Hollis said softly. But I didn't bring you here to posture. I brought you here because there is a second piece. He slid an envelope across the table. Naomi didn't touch it. What's in there? She asked. A copy of the sealed report. And a list of payments made from a Norkett-controlled PAC to a councilman who shepherded through a zoning variance that made Harborview possible. Your father's name appears as a consultant on one invoice. Lies, she said. The word came out on reflex, the way you reach for a child stepping into the street. Maybe, Hollis said. Or maybe he let someone use his shell in exchange for a favor he couldn't afford not to ask. She touched the envelope. She didn't pull it closer. What do you get if I believe you? A small war, he said. Which I enjoy. And a chance to watch Adrian Vale choose between the deal and the woman he married to get it. He leaned back. Tell him. See if he still looks at you like a person instead of an asset. Naomi stood. The chair legs skated back over tile. I've never been anyone's asset, she said. Not even when I signed the paper. Everyone is someone's leverage, Hollis said. It's just a matter of rate. She left the envelope on the table and walked out into the damp air. Adrian's reflection was a dark shape in the cafe window, he didn't move. She turned left, then right, then stopped under the awning of a closed flower shop. He joined her 30 seconds later, coat speckled with mist. Well, he asked. He says my father knew. She kept her eyes on the river, the barges that bullied their way downstream. About the sealed report. That he signed a confidentiality in exchange for a premium that kept people employed. Adrian's jaw worked once, a switch grinding inside. Did he give you proof? He gave me an envelope, she said. I didn't touch it. Why? Because if it's a lie, I won't give him the satisfaction of watching me grab it. And if it's the truth, I don't want the first time I hold it to be under his eyes. She finally looked at him. Do you believe he could have known? He didn't answer fast. I believe good men do ugly math under duress, he said. And I believe Norkett would happily use a man like your father to launder their risk. The answer opened something in her chest and hurt it at the same time. He also implied, payments. A POC. A councilman. He said my father's name appears as a consultant. That sounds like Hollis, Adrian said. Half fact, half rumor, all poison. Then we stopped guessing. Naomi squared her shoulders. We go to the source. Norkett. My father, she said. Today. Before the board sees anything. Before the press writes whatever Hollis wants. Adrian nodded once. Agreed. He signaled the driver with a finger that barely moved. They rode back with the city smeared gray outside the glass. Naomi held herself still so she wouldn't unravel. Adrian watched the world as if he could will it to show him its edges. In the library, Inez appeared like Grace with a towel and a soft voice. Richard Carter is on his way up, ma'am. He said you called. Thank you, Naomi said. Her throat felt raw, as if she'd run too hard in cold air. Richard came in wearing the suit he saved for days that mattered. Today, it hung wrong on him. He kissed his daughter's temple. He shook Adrian's hand. He looked at their faces and saw enough to sit without protest. What happened? He asked. Naomi didn't circle. Did you sign a confidentiality 5 years ago related to Harborview soil remediation? He closed his eyes for half a second. Opened them. Yes. Did you take money under the table from a Norca-controlled PAC to pass a zoning variance? Her voice didn't shake. No, he said, immediate, flat. I never took $1 under the table. They funneled money into a workforce training program we were piloting. Above board. I signed off because I wanted the men who were going to lose their jobs to have a bridge. Did you let them use one of your shells to make it look less like Norcat paying Norcat? Adrian asked, softer than Naomi expected. Richard pinched the bridge of his nose. I let them use a shell to protect the donor from a union backlash that would have killed the program. He looked at his daughter. I was drowning, now. I made the best choices I knew how to make with the monsters breathing on me. The soil, she said. You knew. I knew it was bad, he said. I didn't know it was catastrophic. I read the summary they gave me and the lawyer said, he stopped. He swallowed. I should have fought harder. But I was so tired of watching men cry in my office. Silence opened its mouth. Naomi felt her anger, a living thing, rear, buck, then settle, snorting, not bridled but listening. Okay, she said, voice low. Then we tell the truth now. All of it. We get ahead of Hollis's story and we make our own. Richard looked at Adrian. You'd throw your deal under the bus to do that? Adrian didn't blink. I'd rather lose a deal than build a life with rot under the foundation. Something in Richard's shoulders let go. He looked like a man who'd found a chair after years of standing. Then tell me what to do. We'll need your documents, Adrian said. Emails. The training program's books. The counsel who briefed you on the cap. Richard nodded. I'll bring it all. He stood. He reached for Naomi's hand and didn't quite touch it. I'm sorry, he said. Not for the choices I made to keep people fed. For the way I didn't tell you the parts that would have let you decide if you could stand me. Her throat burned. I'm not done being mad, she said. But I'm not done being your daughter, either. He left with a man's careful dignity. The door eased shut behind him and left the room too full of air. Naomi sat. Adrian didn't. He stood looking at the window as if the city might confess if he held still enough. You keep choosing the hard thing, she said. He glanced at her. I didn't always. What changed? He considered, then gave her a piece of bone instead of a piece of candy. The first time I signed a deal that knotted 3 neighborhoods into 6 years of dust, I told myself the end justified the means. The end looked like profit. The means looked like people. I couldn't sleep for a month. She studied him, the line between his brows, the place where his hair refused perfect order. So you decided to sleep again. I decided to be a man my mother wouldn't slap, he said. She had a mean right hook. Naomi laughed, not because it was funny, but because it put a crack in the glass around her. The laugh turned wet at the edges before she could catch it. She wiped a thumb under one eye. I hate crying in front of men. I hate making women cry, he said. So we're aligned. He came closer, not touching, just close enough that his steadiness became something she could lean against without moving. The air between them changed shape. The contract they'd signed felt, for a breath, less like a shackle and more like a rope that might yet be tied into something useful. Her phone buzzed again. A photo this time. Of the envelope, opened. The top page visible but unreadable in the shot. Tick-tock, the message read. Truth expires. Coward, she whispered. We move now, Adrian said. I'll put legal on threading disclosure that protects us while burying Norcat in their own garbage. You. I'll talk to Norkit's junior block, she said, straightening. Not as your wife. As the daughter of a man who signed the wrong thing for the right reasons. I'll ask them if they want to be complicit when this cracks in public. He nodded once, crisp. Inez will arrange the calls. They worked through lunch, through the hour when the house normally went quiet as a held breath. Naomi told the truth to 3 men and 2 women who all thought they already owned it. She watched how words landed and decided that sometimes persuasion is just honesty spoken without apology. At 4, the sky broke into a clean rain. At 5, Malcolm Pierce stormed in waving a draft. If we self-disclose the cap and the training program and deliver a narrow confession that pins Norkit to the wall, we can force a renegotiation of terms and stall Hollis. It's ugly. But it's ours. Adrian skimmed, edited 2 lines, handed it to Naomi. You sign first. She read every word. She changed one, regret to responsibility, and initialed the margin. Then she signed in a hand that looked more like her again. She passed the pen to Adrian. His signature slit the paper clean. They didn't touch when they finished. They looked at each other the way you look at a person you've lifted something heavy with, recognition, relief, the ache in muscles you didn't know you had. Night came with a blue hush. In the dining room, 2 plates cooled untouched before Inez, wise, took them away and returned with soup. Naomi ate without tasting, then stopped halfway, spoon midair. When we beat this, she said, because saying if felt like treason, what then? Then, Adrian said, we decide what our marriage is when it isn't holding up a deal. She set the spoon down. And if it isn't anything? Then we set each other free, he said, and the words landed like a hand cupping the back of her skull, gentle and firm. But I'm not ready to decide that yet. She breathed. Neither am I. They stood at the library window later, 2 silhouettes in a room that smelled like old paper and a second chance. The rain thinned. The city blinked awake for its night shift. Thank you, she said, surprising herself with the need to say it. For what? For saying partner and meaning it. He didn't say you're welcome. He said, good. Then act like it again tomorrow. She smiled into the glass. Bossy. Accurate. At midnight, when she finally lay down, she did not try to numb herself into sleep. She let the day live in her, Hollis's face, her father's confession, Adrian's steady yes. Somewhere between awake and sleep, an image came, a rope knotted, then carefully untied by 2 patient pairs of hands until it lay straight again. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. One more message, stripped of pretense. Your confession won't save you. The councilman will. Ask Adrian about Whitaker and Sons. Her blood went cold. Whitaker and Sons, Norkit's favorite outside auditor. Adrian had mentioned them only once, in a tone like someone saying a prayer in a language they didn't quite trust. Naomi sat up. She typed with thumbs that didn't tremble. What about them? No answer. Just the tiny satisfaction of a red receipt winking out. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, grabbed her robe, and crossed the hall. She knocked, once, the door opened before her fist fell a second time. Adrian stood there, barefoot, t-shirt, eyes alert like a man who sleeps next to a radio. There's one more thing, she said. Hollis says Whitaker and Sons is our weak rib. He didn't swear. He didn't rush. He stepped back and motioned her in. Tell me everything. She did. When she finished, he rubbed a hand over his mouth and dropped it. If Whitaker cooked Norkit's summary 5 years ago, they'll have left fingerprints. Quiet ones. The kind only an idiot or a genius would miss. He looked up. We have 7 hours before the market opens. Let's be geniuses. They moved to the desk. The lamp made a small sun on the wood. On the wall, dark held its breath. The lamp on Adrian's desk burned all night, a small sun trying to outlast the dark. Naomi sat across from him, hair pulled into a messy knot, sleeves rolled up, her father's words still echoing in her ribs. The papers spread between them weren't just numbers, they were bones, broken, fused, reshaped. Here, Adrian said finally, stabbing a finger at a notation on an old PDF. Whitaker and Sons, Environmental Compliance Summary, 2020. Naomi leaned in. It's their seal. Look closer. He zoomed in, tracing the faint watermark. This isn't their current seal. This design was retired in 2018. Which means the 2020 report was signed with a stamp that didn't exist anymore. Her breath hitched. A forgery. A forgery Whitaker either overlooked or authorized. His eyes lifted to hers, steady and sharp. And whoever gave them cover is either in Norcott's pocket, or mine. By dawn, the house hummed with low, urgent voices. Malcolm Pierce stormed into the library, hair uncombed, eyes bloodshot. I traced the metadata from that report, he said, dropping a folder so hard it slid halfway across the table. It originated from an IP address inside Vale Group. Naomi froze. Inside? Yes. Malcolm's mouth twisted. Your father may have signed what he shouldn't, but someone here laundered the forgery. Adrian's voice was calm enough to cut glass. Who? Malcolm hesitated, then pushed another sheet forward. Naomi's eyes skimmed the name and her stomach dropped. Julian Reed. Adrian's cousin. His right hand. The man who toasted them at the wedding reception with a grin so wide it had looked harmless. No, Naomi whispered. He sat 2 seats from me yesterday. He called Hollis a vulture. Because he already knew what the vulture was eating, Adrian said. His jaw flexed once, hard. They found Julian in his office, floor-to-ceiling windows spilling early sun across expensive rugs. He was pouring whiskey at 9 a.m., the kind of man who could make that look like a strategy. Cousin, Julian said, lifting the glass. Come to congratulate me on beating you at your own game? Adrian didn't answer. He walked across the room with slow precision, the air tightening around him. Naomi followed, every nerve live. You signed off Whitaker's forgery, Adrian said. Not a question. Julian's grin was lazy. Business is business. Norcott paid me more in a week than you've ever valued me in a year. You sold us out. I sold you out, Julian corrected. His gaze flicked to Naomi. Funny, though, your wife wasn't as reluctant to sell herself when the deal required it. Naomi's hand curled into a fist before she thought. The sound of her palm striking his cheek cracked the room open. Julian stumbled, glass shattering against the rug. Say my name right when you spit it, she said, voice shaking but fierce. It's Naomi Vale. And I am not for sale. Adrian's eyes flashed, fury, yes, but something else too. Something like pride. You'll hand over every document, every email, every receipt, Adrian said, voice low and lethal. And then you'll walk out of this building for the last time. Julian smirked, blood bright at the corner of his mouth. You think tossing me fixes anything? Hollis has everything they need. The board will burn you alive when they see how deep the rot goes. Then we'll bring them the fire first, Naomi said. For the first time, Julian looked at her with something less than amusement. Maybe recognition. Maybe fear. Later, after security escorted Julian out and Malcolm began combing through the wreckage, Naomi found herself alone with Adrian in the library. The morning light made his green eyes sharper, unguarded in a way that startled her. You didn't hesitate, he said. When? When he went after you. You didn't flinch. You hit him. She exhaled, half a laugh. I was terrified. But I was more tired of being treated like leverage. Adrian's mouth curved. Not a smile, but the shadow of one. You're not leverage, Naomi. Not to me. The words sank deeper than she wanted. Deeper than she'd let anyone reach since the day her father asked her to sacrifice herself. She looked away, heat prickling her throat. Don't say things you can't mean. I don't waste words, he said softly. Their eyes locked, a current snapping between them. For a moment, the distance, the contract, the lies, the power plays, burned away. What remained was raw, terrifyingly human. Naomi stepped back first. We still have to survive this, she said, her voice a shield. We will, Adrian answered. But the look he gave her said something else entirely, and after, I'm not letting you walk away. Naomi woke to the sound of her phone vibrating against the nightstand, sharp and relentless. For a moment, she thought it was another text from Hollis. But the screen was full of headlines instead, glowing like fire alarms. Billionaire's bride in secret Harborview scandal. Naomi Vale implicated in environmental cover-up. Marriage built on lies. Her chest went cold. She clicked one at random. There it was, her name on forged documents, emails she had never written, correspondence that made it look as if she had known about Harborview's contamination and had colluded with Adrian to bury it. Julian's revenge. Her stomach knotted, bile rising. She was still gripping the phone when Adrian appeared in the doorway, already dressed, tie askew, eyes darker than she'd ever seen. You saw it? He asked. Yes. Her voice cracked. He dragged me into it. He wanted to, Adrian said, stepping into the room. He knows you're my weakness. The word, weakness, hit her harder than the headlines. I don't want to be your weakness, she whispered. His gaze didn't waver. Then be my strength. By 10 a.m., the Vale boardroom was on fire, not literal flames, but raised voices, slammed fists, executives demanding answers. Naomi sat at Adrian's right, chin high even as her pulse raced. Every screen in the room showed her name under headlines. This is untenable, one board member snapped. Our credibility is bleeding out by the minute. You married her to stabilize us, Adrian, and now she's dragging us into ruin. Naomi's fingers curled into her lap. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but she felt every eye sharpen on her, waiting to pounce. Adrian rose slowly, adjusting his cuffs, calm in the middle of chaos. Naomi Vale is not the problem, he said evenly. She's the solution. A stunned silence. She's been uncovering truths in this mess long before any of you noticed the rot, he continued. The reason Julian Reed is out there slinging lies is because he knows she's the only one in this room who won't break under his weight. Naomi's breath caught. Board members, Adrian said, voice low, dangerous, you can keep mistaking my wife for leverage. Or you can start realizing she's the one who just saved this deal from collapsing yesterday. Choose wisely. Not one dared to reply. By noon, the scandal had spilled into the streets. Photographers camped outside the Vale house, shouting Naomi's name as if it belonged to them. Headlines scrolled across screens in cafes, taxis, and office lobbies. She stood at the tall window of the library, watching the chaos below. Her reflection looked like someone she didn't recognize, strong, yes, but tired, hunted. Adrian entered quietly. They'll eat you alive if we let them, he said. And if we fight back? Then they'll choke on the truth, he said. But we have to stand together. Her chest tightened. Together, as in Vale Group's power couple? Or together as? His voice softened. As us. She looked at him then, really looked, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the steadiness in the way he stood beside her. He wasn't just shielding her. He was choosing her. All right, she whispered. Together. That evening, they stood before a wall of microphones, cameras clicking like 1,000 insect wings. Naomi wore black, sharp, simple, unyielding. Adrian stood beside her, his presence a fortress. I did not write the emails that have been circulated today, Naomi said clearly, her voice carrying across the room. They are forged. They are lies designed to weaken me, and by extension, my husband, and this company. But I will not be silenced. The room buzzed. Adrian stepped forward. My cousin, Julian Reed, is responsible for this sabotage. Effective immediately, he is stripped of all authority and expelled from Vale Group operations. The truth is not negotiable, and neither is loyalty. Naomi felt her throat tighten. This was more than business, it was him putting his family, his blood, behind her. Reporters shouted questions, flashes burst. But Naomi only heard her own heartbeat. For the first time, she wasn't standing alone. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the storm of cameras had dispersed, Naomi retreated to her wing. She needed air, silence, anything but the weight of the world pressing in. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk, searching for paper. Instead, her fingers brushed against a thin envelope she didn't remember placing there. Her mother's handwriting stared back at her. Her chest stilled. She tore it open carefully, breath shaky. My dearest Naomi. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you in person. The world is not kind to women who stand in rooms built by men. But you, my love, were born to change that. Don't fear the man who sees your fire, fear the one who ignores it. If someone ever tries to make you small, remember. Your worth is not in the deal, but in the truth you carry. Naomi's tears fell silently, smudging the ink. Her mother's words were a map she hadn't realized she needed. And then her breath caught. At the bottom of the letter was another line, almost like a whisper across time. I once worked with a young man named Adrian Vale. He was different, hungry, yes, but not cruel. If your paths ever cross, remember that even the sharpest man can still learn how to love. Naomi's heart thundered. Her mother had known him before. She clutched the letter to her chest, trembling. Adrian wasn't just a stranger she'd been forced to marry. He had been woven into her story long before either of them realized. Adrian found her minutes later, still holding the letter. He paused at the doorway, reading her face. What is it? He asked gently. She handed it to him. He read in silence, his jaw tightening, then softening, then breaking just enough for her to see the boy inside the man. I met her, he admitted quietly. Your mother. Once, years ago. She was consulting on a housing project. She argued with me for an hour about fairness. I never forgot her. Naomi's breath shivered. She mentioned you. She said you weren't cruel. For the first time since they'd met, Adrian looked unarmored. She gave me hope that I could be more than the monster people wanted me to be. Naomi stepped closer, her hand brushing his. Maybe that's why we're here. Not because of contracts. Because she saw something in you. And maybe she knew I'd see it too. The silence between them pulsed with heat, with gravity. Adrian's hand covered hers, firm but trembling slightly. No more lies, he whispered. Not between us. No more, she agreed. Their lips met, not in a rush, not in desperation, but in a promise. A crack in the armor, a spark catching fire. For the first time, the marriage forged in chains began to feel like a choice. Naomi thought she'd already survived the worst. Headlines, forged emails, whispers in hallways. But the worst waited until morning, when the world woke to a video. It played on every screen, from office lobbies to barroom TVs, grainy footage of Naomi sitting in a cafe with Graham Hollis. The angle was clever, shot over her shoulder, just enough to show her face, her lips moving, Hollis sliding an envelope across the table. Naomi Vale accepts bribes from Hollis to bury Harborview scandal. Naomi's stomach lurched. No, she whispered to the empty room. That's not what happened. The video cut before the part where she'd refused. Before she'd walked away. Julian's final strike. The door burst open, Adrian, phone in hand, eyes storm dark. He leaked it. They'll believe it, Naomi said, her throat tight. They'll believe I sold us out. They'll believe what we prove, Adrian countered, his voice iron. Not what they see. By afternoon, the board convened an emergency session. The press packed the marble lobby downstairs, their questions climbing the walls like smoke. Naomi stood at Adrian's side, the video looping on a screen above the long table. This, one board member hissed, is indefensible. She was caught with Hollis. You ask us to stake billions on the word of a woman who... Enough. Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. He rose slowly, his shadow stretching long. That woman is my wife. And more importantly, she is the only one in this room who hasn't lied to protect herself. Gasps rippled. Naomi's hands trembled, but she stepped forward, her voice clear. Yes, I met Hollis. Yes, he tried to hand me evidence. But I left it behind. Because I will not be complicit in burying the truth, even when it implicates my own father. That is more than Julian Reed, or Whitaker and Sons, or half of you can say. She placed the letter, her mother's letter, on the table. My mother told me the truth matters, even when it breaks you. I'm not here to save a deal. I'm here to prove that Vale Group is built on something more than contracts and bloodlines. If you want someone who bows to liars, vote against me now. Silence. Heavy. Shifting. Then the silver-haired board member, the one who had studied Naomi hardest before, nodded once. I vote to stand with the Vales. One by one, others followed. Not all, but enough. Security dragged Julian into the room an hour later, wrists cuffed, fury painted across his face. You think you've won, he spat. Hollis still owns the narrative. The world will never believe her. Adrian's gaze was calm, lethal. The world doesn't decide the truth. We do. And you're done deciding anything. Naomi stepped forward. For a moment, Julian smirked, waiting for weakness. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said, You taught me something. That cages aren't always locked from the outside. Sometimes we build them for ourselves. Enjoy yours. His smirk faltered. For the first time, he looked small. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Naomi stood by the window, city lights flickering like restless stars. The storm had passed, but her chest still carried the weight of it. Adrian joined her, sleeves rolled, exhaustion carved into his face. He didn't speak at first. Just stood there, shoulder to shoulder. You risked everything for me today, Naomi said softly. I didn't risk it, he said. I chose it. Her throat tightened. Why? He turned, eyes steady, voice raw. Because I love you, Naomi. Not the deal. Not the optics. You. From the moment you stood in that boardroom and refused to be silenced, I knew. I fought it, I buried it, but today I couldn't anymore. Tears blurred her vision. You're the man who caged me, Adrian. And I'm the man who'll spend the rest of his life proving the cage was never locked, he whispered. That freedom has always been yours. If you'll have me. Her chest broke open. She reached up, cupping his face, and kissed him, not the cautious brush of before, but a claiming, a surrender, a promise. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I don't want freedom from you. I want freedom with you. His arms wrapped around her, fierce, steady. Then with me, always. Months later, Harborview was rebuilt, not on lies, but on a new foundation, clean and honest. Norcott bent under the weight of exposure. Hollis slunk back into shadows. The press had moved on to the next scandal, but when they spoke of Naomi Vale, it was no longer with suspicion. It was with something rarer. Respect. And in the Vale mansion, in the library where it all began, Naomi played her mother's song on the piano. Adrian leaned against the frame, listening. When she finished, he crossed to her, kissed her hair, and whispered, "Partners?" She smiled. "Always." And for the first time, their marriage was no longer a contract. It was a choice. A love. A freedom. Naomi and Adrian's story reminds us, sometimes the cages we fear are really doors waiting to be opened. And when love chooses honesty over power, freedom follows. Do you believe love can survive betrayal? Let us know in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Comment where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories that keep you on the edge.